Hi there, I'm your host June. Today we're excited to bring you the Matrix Success webinar, where you'll hear expert advice and tips to help you stay on top of your study goals. Before we begin, let's meet today's expert. For this webinar, we recommend you have a pen and paper on hand to jot down our tips. Now that you're ready, let's start the webinar.
Let's do a quick survey before we begin. Put your hand up if you are in year 12 this year. Put your hand up in year 11. Good. Put your hand up if you're in year 10. Put your hand up if you got dragged here by your parents. Let's be honest. Oh, yeah. So my presentation looks a bit like this. There are four main parts. I want to start off with just talking to you about your problems that you haven't thought about. I call this stupid gazelle. Watch the video first. But the gazelle ran into a tree next to a lion. Now, what's the key message here? There's a lot of similarities between the gazelle and you. It sounds very offensive, right? Let me explain to you why. The question that you should be asking is, why did the gazelle run into the tree? What do you think? What's it doing? It wakes up in the morning and says, I better run fast. How fast? Faster than yesterday. Why? Because if I don't, the lion will eat me up. The lion wakes up in the morning and says, I better run faster than yesterday. Because I'm very hungry. And I didn't quite run fast enough to catch the gazelle. It's focused on doing things. The best or the worst advice I got from my parents when I was in year 11 is, study harder. Put your hand up if your parents have told you to study harder. I mean, I bet it's everyone in here. I mean, if you're motivated to be on a Saturday morning, and it's the worst advice your parents could give you, right? Why is that? Well, if you're focused on doing things, the problem is, you're so focused on doing things, you don't quite know where you're going. We just do it because we're told to do it. We call that having no goal. Put your hand up if you think you have a goal. Most students would talk about the goals in terms of marks, which is ineffective. If we talk about in terms of marks, it's not compelling enough to initiate any changes that is needed to see remarkable improvement. If you're looking for some sort of like step-up change, you've got to think about what would help me really take the kind of changes I need to do to make it happen. New year, a lot of my friends say stuff like, I'm going to quit smoking. And I said, no, you won't. The reason is they're focusing on what? Rather, they should be saying, I want to be a healthier person this year. If you say that, what comes after that is very obvious. You'll start eating healthy, you'll quit smoking, you'll start running, right? So you need to start thinking about today, the next 60 minutes, do I really know who I want to be? And then what do I need to do to achieve that? I want you to be thinking about that throughout this presentation. The second thing is, it doesn't have a system. The system you have is broken right now. I'll tell you why. You get a school report once every 6 months. What does the school report do? It looks backwards. It tells you how well or how poorly you've done in the last 6 months. I got my half-yearly report, my dad says, okay, what do you think he said to me? After looking at the report. Study harder. Right? So I did. I did huge amount of hours of study. And 6 months later, I get the report again. I put in this amount of effort, my results difference was like this. And I'm thinking, what happened? What do you think my dad said at the end of 11? Huh? Well, you must study harder. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not sure if I can find any more hours in a day. That's when I realized perhaps I'm doing the right things the wrong way. Doing the right things the right way is not that obvious. Another example would be, have you been recently on a holiday, family holiday? You know, I tend to drive to my family to, up north. I'm really bad with directions. My wife keeps reminding me. So I have to have a navigation on. And the navigation tells me literally once every 3 minutes where I am, where I should be going. Can you imagine you're heading towards Newcastle and you land in Wollongong and you go, oh, well, that's what your situation is with your school report. So put your hand up if you have a system for accurately measuring your progress towards your goal. First, you need to have a goal. Second, how do I know if I'm moving in the right direction? I haven't come across many students in the last 20 years who can satisfy both conditions. But once you do, magic happens. The parents don't need to tell the kids what to do, how to do it, when to do it. The intrinsic motivation kicks in because you have the information you need. So the first problem here is, it's not about ATAR and scaling. I don't know ATAR and scaling. The first problem here is, I gotta figure these things out first. And if you've never been told about these things, it's not too late. If you're in your 11, you have a huge amount of time. If you are in your 12, you have 1 month to figure this out. Have you heard this phrase? Faster you run, further you have to see. If you are in your 11 this year, you are going to realize the pace of learning and amount of content you have to process is going to be twice what you used to in your 10. If you are in your 12 at the moment, you know this already. The amount of content, the pace at which your learning takes place has significantly increased. The burden of learning has doubled. What this is trying to say is, in your 12, you have assessment task every quarter, every term. And if you have an assessment task every term, as opposed to exam once every 6 months, you got to take into consideration of, okay, well, does my system allow me to measure my progress in accordance with the speed? Here's an example of what my friend does. So we have a campus at Strathfield, and on the ground floor, there used to be a coffee shop. And my friend used to own this coffee shop. And he basically, would welcome me every morning. I'll be having my coffee there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we used to have this small talk. How are you doing, James? And he goes, good, every day. One day I asked him, how are you doing today? And he goes, not good. I was like, what's going on, James? And he goes, oh, we haven't sold enough takeaway coffees this morning. And so I was curious and said, how do you know? He had a system. What system do you think he had? He wasn't going onto an electronic system looking up any coffees and so. It's too difficult. It's like you guys opening up a computer, trying to open up Excel spreadsheet, figuring out where my rank. It's too hard. What do you think he did? He stacked takeaway coffee cups behind the counter. Each column had 20. He had a target. He will look at how many columns of coffee cups are missing, and he will know exactly at any point in time how many takeaway coffees he sold that day. Now that's a beautiful system. It's beautiful because it's simple and easy to track. In case you're wondering why he's running a coffee shop, he had a clear purpose. Hey, I want to become a great entrepreneur. I think the coffee shop is a good place to start. Like he had this clear understanding of the identity, and the rest takes care of itself. Here's another example. I have another friend who is an amateur boxer. I didn't know this until I spoke to this guy. What do you think a professional boxer, or someone who wants to become a boxer, what do you think they do when they wake up in the morning? What do you think is the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning? Run? Run? Sounds like a good idea. What do you think they do? Not true. This is what my wife does every night. They weigh themselves. Like, why? Why do you weigh yourself? In the world of boxing, if you're meant to weigh 60 kilograms on the day of the fight, you have to weigh 60 kilograms. Not 61, not 60.5, you have to weigh 60 kilograms exact. So what does he do? By weighing himself, and he weighs 70 kilograms, 3 months, heading towards a fight, what do you think he realizes? Oh my God, whatever training I'm doing isn't effective. I have to change. Can you imagine he weighs himself 3 days before the fight and goes, shit, I weigh 70 kilograms. I have to lose 10 kilograms in 3 days. What do you think he has to do then? That's what you guys do. Exams. Oh my God, Mom, I have exam next week. What do? I have to learn 6 months of my whatever I have to learn in 3 days. You probably do most amount of exam preparation in 3 days, right? Think about the similarity. Think about your experiences. Is that a stressful experience? I mean, the guy who loses 10 kilograms in 3 days before the fight, he will lose for sure. But that's what you are doing, and you're expecting a different result. The kids that we mentor here, they're like German machines. 2 weeks before the exam, they're already prepared. They don't start the exam preparation 2 weeks before. They know when the exam will come. They start the process 3 months, 6 months before. If you are an 11 student at Matrix, and if you just did the holiday course, you realize you've just finished the second module before even school had started, which means you are now, from a content perspective, 6 months ahead. What do you think these kids will do when the school term begins? They have a rhythm. What's the rhythm? I've just covered 6 months of content, which will be my half-yearly exam. So what do I do every week? An exam paper every week. By the time the exam comes, in 12, 14 weeks, they've done something like 15 to 20 exam papers. I don't care how smart you are, you can't compete with someone who's done 20 exam papers before the actual exam. Unfortunately, the kind of intellect that's demanded in some of your subjects, there is a bare minimum. You don't have to be a genius to do well in 3D math or physics or chemistry, for that matter. It's a strategy. And you think about how you spend your time heading towards your exam preparation, and you need to take that as a, hey, this is the time now where I need to think about doing a lot of changes. If you're in your 11, you're in a great position. It hasn't started, you have not 12 months, you have 9 months. Actually, you have less than 9 months. Year 12 begins for year 11 in October this year, right? So February, you've got what, 8, 9 months, I guess, to figure this out. I think the best way to really ask yourself is, do I have a goal and a system for measuring your progress? That's the golden question that I ask every single student that I come across. What is your goal? Who do you want to be? And therefore, what do you need to do? How do you know that if you're making progress or not? Can you imagine from a parent's perspective? So we invested 12 years in your education, financially, physically, emotionally. I'm only into year 4. I have a year 4 student. Can you imagine after 12 years of investing and supporting you, you come back and say, oh no, I failed. I don't know if I want to take that kind of chance. I think you have to love your kids so much to put up with it, right? If you're not convinced yet, another way of looking at it is, how do they do it? The kids who are 99 plus ATAR, 99 ATAR refers to top 1% in the state. How are they different? It's a good way of looking at it, I guess. The 2 things stand out when I observe them. They're constantly thinking about, who do I want to be? It's not normal for you to know who you want to be at this age. But if you do, it's fantastic. But if you're not thinking about it, you have to start thinking about it. And secondly, they're continually building effective habits. They're continually improving their study routine. They don't focus on efficiency. They focus on being more effective. What does that mean? These are the 4 things that stand out. 1, they're goal-oriented. They know what they want. They know who they want to be. If they don't know who they want to be, at the very least, they know what they want. I'm hoping today, by the end of today's session, you'll start thinking about these things, and hopefully you'll reach out, maybe in a week or 2, for further advice. Sally Kim, now it would have been 12 years ago. She came to me at the beginning of year 11, just like this, in this seminar, in January, when she was in 11. She came to me and said, you know what, after listening to your talk, I want this. I thought, okay, well then you have to first of all consider all of the things that I've suggested. She went away, did all of the things that I asked her to do. She went to North Indian Girls, and her ATAR was 99.95. Now, there's a lot of details I've just cut out. Just to give you one small detail, during her trial exam, she had to endure a death of a family member. Can you imagine that? Your mom passing away during your trial exam? She was so determined she wasn't going to get anything in the way. It sounds really cruel thing to say, but she knew. If you know who you want to be, you're going to be so intrinsically motivated and determined, you'll find a way to get there. She's become obviously a doctor. She wanted to be a doctor. I think she's in Concord Hospital as a resident there, last time I caught up. So think about this. Second, they're extremely disciplined. What does that mean? When they say they will be committed to doing something, no matter what happens, they do it. So here's a litmus test. If you had an experience where you made a promise with your parents and say, I will do this every day. And if you can carry that out, we say you're disciplined. Okay? One of the things that I do with students is that I request that every single student test the level of discipline by doing this challenge. What's a challenge? I call it 100-day running challenge. Every morning when you wake up, you drink a glass of water, and then you go for a run for 30 minutes. It's the first thing you do. You have to do it for 100 days consecutive. On the 62nd day, if you didn't do it because you were sick, you have to start all over again. Okay? If you decide to do this, obviously for your 11 students, your 12 students will need different kind of device, and you come back with an evidence of 100 days of running, I will spend 2 weeks of my time helping you run through this process. Okay? You need to be worthy of my time. What's the challenge? The challenge is running for 100 days in the morning, first thing in the morning. Do you know what happens when you start this? The first 2 weeks, it's like, why the hell am I listening to this guy? Why am I doing this? Your parents are forcing you to do it. The first 2 weeks, right? You're cursing me in your head. The second 2 weeks, you're like, hey, this is not bad, right? Week 5 and 6, something magical happens. You're so young, your body quickly adjusts to this routine. And when it does, by the end of the first month, the whole idea of 30 minutes is 15 minutes away from home, 15 minutes back. What does that do? It is the fastest way of awakening all your biological processes. Why is this important? Because it gives you clarity on what do I do today. When you are in the shower, you'll be thinking about what is my number one most important thing that I have to get done. Secondly, if you happen to be a boy here, right, you'll be awake. Most boys, they're not awake completely until period 3. And there's a problem with this. The problem is, if you are looking for 90 ATAR, yeah, that wouldn't be a much impact. If you're looking for high ATAR, every mark counts. Every hour matters. What does that mean? If I wasn't paying attention in class, and now I had to spend additional time at home figuring out what I had learned to do my homework, it's inefficient. It could be maybe, hey, I'm spending extra 45 minutes. Now you add them up over the 90-day period, huge difference takes place. Now how do I and why do I know this? I've had first-hand observations of my students in the past 20 years. Before and after is remarkable. So here's a way of defining it. They get things done on time, every time. Basically, they have no excuses. They don't give you excuses. Now, I know this, I come across as a bit harsh, critical, but you'll thank me for it because you'll be motivated for the next 3 days, and then you'll be back to where you are. Why? People change, not that much. And that's your advantage. It means your friends won't change that much. But if you decide to change and adopt a more effective way of doing things, you can step up in the kind of results you're looking for. The third is they really care about how they spend their time. They hate people who waste their time, and they're always mindful about where they need to spend their time. Everyone has equal number of hours in a day, yet when the ATAR results come out, they get completely different kind of ATAR. It's because how they spend their time. one of the things they do is they're constantly prioritizing. What does that mean when you say prioritize? What is important and what is urgent? I know I can't get everything done today. If I have to do one or two things, I'm going to do the two things that's going to literally move the needle on my learning gaps. And so basically, they just don't have the time to be on their phone. They don't have the time to talk to their friends. During lunchtime, you're in your library doing your school homework. Your behavior changes. It's because the environment you're creating, right, is encouraging you to be more effective in how you spend your time. Put your hand up if you have something like this where you are thinking about prioritizing. If not, you need to be thinking about that. Lastly, they're very process-driven. You know, on Mother's Day, one year, I decided that I'm going to cook scrambled eggs. What the hell do I know about cooking? I'm always, eating breakfast at a cafe. But Mother's Day, you know what? I'm going to cook for her. So I needed a recipe. So I was Googling, and Gordon Ramsay's recipe came up. So I signed up to the master class because the full video was there. I paid $300 for this subscription, for annual subscription. For one video I'll only watch once. I looked at the video, it's like rocket science. He was doing some strange things like, with your frying pan, 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off. 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off. Like, what the hell? Why do I do this? So I ignored the process. I just took some of the parts and did it. And the scrambled eggs tasted shit. Like, what happened? Okay, so I went back to the drawing board. I followed everything he asked me to do. Later on, I realized there was a reason. There was a reason why it's 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off. If you have your frying pan too hot, your scrambled eggs become very rubbery. So he was way of controlling the amount of heat on the frying pan, which I didn't appreciate. It took me about 80 eggs, wasted. My wife was laughing from the sidelines. In the end, I cooked one of the best scrambled eggs she tasted, she says. I don't know how good it was. What's the key lesson that I took away from that? Is repetition. Repetition doesn't work if you don't have a process. Why is repetition important? By repeating the same process over and over again, you quickly discover which part of the process is a blocker, which I realized. And then you realize, which part of the process you can do things concurrently. For example, I was basically cracking the eggs. Once I've cracked all the eggs, then I put the frying pan on, and I realized, I can put the frying pan on while I'm cracking the eggs. You realize that, right? I don't know if you realize your mom would cook your dinner or lunch like this, like 20 minutes. It takes them an hour. Because they've done it so many number of times, they figure things out. But to do that, you need a very well-defined process. These kids, they were able to uncover the areas of learning gaps through this repetition. Here's an example of a process that I want to show you. This is what most kids do. How do you study for English is one of my questions that I ask my scholarship students. All right, my first day of interview, how do you study for English? Tell me, describe it to me, like a recipe. And they typically give me this. When they give me this, I know what the English mark will be like, right? In the low 80s, right? I've only had 1 or 2 students in the last 20 years who came close to something like this. This is the This is a process that I've worked with #1 James Root student in English. It's extremely methodical. It's broken up into parts. What parts? Parts that make up the marking criteria in your essay. And where the hell do we get this? It's in your Band 6 performance descriptor, which nobody looks at. The HSC examiners tell you, okay, how do I know you are a Band 6 student? There are certain criteria that they provide you with. Have you ever heard your teachers say, oh, your themes or your ideas or quotes, they're not there? Or when you do this process in the right sequence, you discover, I really struggle with determining the key themes. For example, I know this is going to take me a lot of time. You know what? I read the book. I don't do the research of the text or the author. That's a problem. So when you run this process, do you know how long this takes if you do it for the first time? 6 weeks. 6 weeks. What is the assessment notification period in year 12? 3 weeks. 3 weeks. How does it work? It doesn't. That's why you memorize your essays. I don't have time to do all this, Mom. I'm going to have to Google things, figure things out, turn it into and make it sound like it's my own, and memorize a couple of essays, fingers crossed. The analogy is here. You go into a Lego competition. We ask you to build a dragon, and you build me a castle. And say, here's the dragon. If you're doing this for English, there's no way you're going to get high marks. If you've never seen anything like this before, it's time to think about this process. Of course it's really hard. Who said it was easy? But you can choose to be this, or you can choose to remain here. I know where I want to be. I like to be at the top of the food chain, not down here. So you have to think about who you want to be. Okay. Now I've set the scene for, hey, what your problems are, what you need in terms of goals and systems, what the top 1% students in the past have done differently. Now I'm ready to tell you about the HSC system. So you can use that information to turn it into a process that will improve your learning. First, the HSC system. Why is it so complicated? It's very complicated. And no one wants to talk about it. Because if you communicate the information incorrectly, you will interpret it incorrectly, and you have this very biased opinion about do's and don'ts. So I started this presentation because I wanted to provide you with the correct information and minimize any misconceptions about the ATAR and scaling. So there's a 7-step process. By the way, I'm giving you this. You're going to get a copy of the slides. So there's a 7-step process. Overall, broadly speaking, we categorize into 3 groups. One is we determine your HSC mark, not HSC exam mark, HSC mark. And then we convert that into a scaled mark. Scaled mark, UAC calls it, also UAC score. And then we use the scaled marks to give you an ATAR. That's the mark. Mark, that's a rank, not a mark. Okay? So let's talk about this in more detail. I think the first thing we need to dive here is about the difference between HSC mark and ATAR. So by the end of year 12, so December sometime this year, maybe December 15 this year, if you're in year 12, you will receive a certificate like this. This certificate contains information about your exam mark, your school assessment mark, and we call this average mark. What average? Average of what? Assessment mark, exam mark, divided by 2. Okay? There's nothing you can do about the exam mark. You can't control it. it is what it is. A lot of changes happen here, depending on your school performance. That's why some of you are thinking about, I want to send my child to a much more competitive school. Whether it's selective school, whether it's a private school, you care about the competitive nature of your school. The reason for that is, if your school is competitive, or more higher performing school, your assessment marks become a lot more predictable. You can predict what the mark will be like. Your mark is less influenced. And I'll show you the calculations around it. And lastly, they give you what they call performance band rating on it. For 2 unit subjects, the performance band ranges from band 2 all the way to band 6. What's band 6? Anything that is 90 or more. If you're doing extension subjects, like extension English, extension math, they have a new band rating called E1, E2, E3, E4. E4 is equivalent to band 6, and therefore if you get anything above 90 or more, or 45 out of 50 or more, then you're given E4. Who does this? NISA, New South Wales Education Authority. That's it. They have nothing to do with your ATAR. Their job's done. And this data gets passed on to these people, UAC people, University Admission Center. They collect all the data. They convert your HSC mark into a scaled mark. They use a scaled mark. They sum it up out of 500, and they give you an ATAR. If you are looking for 99.95, about 40 students get 99.95 every year, you need sum of scaled mark being 480 out of 500. I had the unfortunate experience of having to compete with a friend in my year who was a genius. He did 16 units, crazy. And he came first in every single one of them in the state. No one could beat him. Came first in 4 in math, 3 in math, 3 in English, physics, chemistry, Latin, music. Oh my God. Yeah. I had more friends, though. His UAC score of 491 out of 500 still stands. I did my HSC a long time ago, by the way. His record still stands. 491 out of 500. If you want this, which is 99.95, I have a surprise for you. Put your hand up if you're doing standard English in your 12. Good. Because it's not possible to get that with standard English. There's a reason for it. If you want this, your English scaled mark needs to be 94 out of 100 minimum. If you translate that to a HSC mark, that's about 96, 97, basically. Okay? So if your English isn't very good, the probability of you getting 99.95 isn't going to be there. You might get 8.5, 9.0, but not quite 9.5. So they get this UAC score, which is sum of scaled marks, and turn it into a thing called rank, which is ATAR. So this year, my student got 99.85. If they converted the marks, it became 99.985. It's not quite 9.5 she was aiming for, but obviously it was good enough for her to get into any of the university courses that she was aspiring to. Why do we have two different systems? Because they do two different things. What the HSC mark does is, it tells you about how well you perform in each course. How did you perform in advanced English? How did you perform in biology? How did you perform in business studies? It's telling you about how well you performed. It's a performance band, really. It's a feedback on how well you perform in that course. And as you know, New South Wales Education Standards Authority, NESA, they are responsible for providing this information. The way they calculate the HSC mark is interesting, which we'll go into more detail. First thing is they get the HSC exam mark, which is the final exam, external exam that you sit. And they combine that with not just assessment mark, but moderated. A lot of students think that this is scaled. It's not scaling. Moderation means they're adjusting your mark. How are they moderating? Depends on your school performance. So your assessment mark might go up, but your assessment mark might come down. Like, that doesn't sound fair. Well, actually, it's very fair, actually. You'll see in a minute why it's very fair. Then divide by 2. If you get your certificate and you got like 93 HSC exam mark, 93 your school assessment mark, it means your school has done an excellent job in predicting what your HSC exam mark will be. That's very rare, okay? Because most schools, they either assess you with a difficulty below or above the HSC exam standards for a variety of reasons, okay? Whereas ATAR is a rank, Australian Tertiary University Admission Rank. It's a rank that they use for admission into Australian universities. Okay? And what this does is they're looking at how did you perform relative to everyone else. So in New South Wales, there are 72,000 students sitting in HSC exams, right? Or taking HSC courses. So they're looking at, okay, how did you perform relative to 72,000 students? So if you say I got a 99 ATAR, I'm in top 1%, it means I'm in top 700 in the state. Does that make sense? But well, how can you give me a rank when everyone's doing a different combination of subjects? That's where the scaling comes in. Scaling. Now, if you're in year 11 this year, your school would have given you a form for subject selection that ensures this. Okay? They will make sure that you are choosing combination of subjects that satisfy this criteria, which is there needs to be 8 units of category A courses. What's a category B course? An accounting at TAFE is an example of category B course. Okay? Any courses that are being held outside school. It could be some languages, for example. 2 units of English is compulsory. Okay? Whether it's standard, ESL, whether it's extension, you've got to do 2 units of advanced English or standard English. You need to do 3 board-developed courses of 2 units or more. You can't have a combination of 1 units only. And it has to be 4 subjects. What does that mean? I can't be doing this in year 12. Why not? I'm doing math, English, and science. How many subjects is that? 3. The way they overcome this is, if you go to a Catholic school, what they do is everything called studies of religion. And they make sure those students sit the HSC for studies of religion in year 11. Why? By getting rid of studies of religion in year 11, you can still do 3 subjects in year 12. That's how they overcome it. Is that clear? But if you are in year 11, they would have asked you to do 13 units, minimum 12 units, and that would cover this basis. So a lot of the questions I get asked is like, what do I mean you're an ATAR? I have HSC mark. Isn't that enough? Well, it's because we want to help the universities make the sort of the selection or admission of students into university courses fairly and objectively. To do that, universities had to come up with this thing called ATAR cutoff or lowest selection rank. So I've just pulled out some of the most recent university courses and their corresponding what they call lowest selection rank. People often refer to it as ATAR cutoff. Okay? What is the minimum rank that I need to achieve in order for me to be considered for 2025 HSC exams, right? So For Bachelor of Commerce Law, by the way, if you're doing a law degree, it's a double degree. You have to do arts law, science law, com law. Is that clear? You can't just do law. Yeah, it's a double degree. At UNSW, the lowest selection rank was 97.7, plus law admission test. It's a bit like UCAT, isn't it, for medicine? So there's obviously these ATAR cutoffs, they vary. What's interesting is, Bachelor of Commerce at UC is 96, top 4% in the state, whereas UNSW, it's top 2.95%. How does this get determined? Supply and demand. If more kids are applying for, one particular course this year than another year, then the rank has to go up. They want to take top 150 kids, for example. Yeah. Now, the most important part for you will be, how are my assessment marks adjusted? For example, why are they adjusted? Have you thought about that? You might go to school A, and you might get 100% in your assessment task in tuning math. And you might be thinking, that was a relatively easy exam. And you talk to a friend who goes to another school, and they did a similar exam on similar topics, and they might come back and go, oh my, that was a really hard exam. And they may have got 85%, for example. Now, from New South Wales Education Standards Authority perspective, how do we know whether I should be using that 85% as your final assessment mark or not? Because every school will assess their students differently. Like one year I heard from one of my senior boys students, in their foreign exam, they put a question in there that no one can solve. It's not even in the syllabus. And I said, why would they do that? Oh, my teacher didn't want anyone getting full marks. Right? So you do have scenarios like this. Or, in other schools they might say, oh yeah, my teacher makes our exams intentionally harder than HSC exams. So we find HSC exams easier. The schools will deploy different strategies. To make sure all the students are assigned fair assessment marks, NISA takes a look at your school performance. The only performance that matters to them is the common exam, the common external exam, which is HSC exam. That's the only thing they care about. So what they do is they compare your school's performance in the HSC exam and map it against your internal assessment marks. If you claim you're number one student in Math Extension 1 is awarded 99%, then that student's performance should reflect in the HSC exam accordingly. Would you agree? So they look at this. What's the rule? The rule is simple. Total school assessment marks after adjustment must equal to total HSC exam marks from your school. Now, what does that mean? Let's say in school A, there were 10 kids, and the overall assessment marks in English ranged from, let's say, 95 to all the way down to, let's say, 80. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, the sum was 950. So they added up all of the students' internal assessment marks was 950. they will do the HSC exam. And in the HSC exam, they lay out the marks. If the school did really well here, and got like 97, 96, no, and the sum is 1,000, what's the difference? 950 there, 1,000 there. What's the difference? 50. 50 additional marks must be distributed here. That's why school performance is important. Does that make sense? I'll show you the exact mechanics of this. What happens if it's quite the opposite? Which is like 950 here, but they really didn't perform very well and got 900. What does that mean? They have to adjust your assessment marks by taking away total sum of how much? 50. So the question is then who loses marks? Who gains marks? This is how it works in a nutshell. Okay? So the actual determination of this is statistically quite complex. But it's equivalent to doing something like this. Okay? You're probably wondering, how do I know this is accurate? Well, it's been checked by the UAC website, UAC personnel. So the way you think about it is like this. And there's a reason I'm telling you this, because now you're going to have an indicator in a minute. These are the actual marks, by the way, that are collected. Let's say in school A, let's say English, these are the final assessment mark. And this is why I was telling some of my students in my class, you need a spreadsheet and documenting every single assessment mark you've been given and their corresponding weighting. Because at the end of the trial exams, when your school gives you an overall mark, overall assessment mark, you want to make sure that it's accurate. Okay? So you need to, I've seen cases where they've actually made mistakes. So if this is the actual overall assessment marks, your school's giving you, go, hey, Peter, well done. You came first in English at school with an overall 94 assessment mark. Well done. And then Sally, Linda, no. These students, month and a half later, they sit the HSC exam, and these exam marks are given. Okay? So the way it works is, the Board of Studies would look at, NISA would look at, okay, Peter, we need to give you the final adjusted assessment mark. They look at, okay, Peter, what did you get for your HSC exam? 97. So HSC exam, 97. You can't change that. Plus, we have to adjust your assessment mark. You came first, you get the highest HSC exam mark from English, from your school, as your assessment mark. So what did you get? 97 plus, not 94, whatever the highest was, which is 97. Divide by 2. If I'm Sally, I came second. So Sally gets 95. HSC exam, where are you, Sally? Here. Plus, she came second, and therefore, she gets the second highest HSC English exam mark as her assessment mark, which is 96. You can see Linda did her a big favor. She got 96 divided by 2. Yes?
Sorry. So for that mark, does Sally got HSC? Oh no, the assessment mark.
93.
Yeah, 93.
So 93 got adjusted to 96. So your assessment marks are not final. They're indicative, depending on. So have you ever seen like comprehensive public school that's not very competitive, but you always get one of those students getting like 99.75? Have you seen this before? If I don't go to a very competitive school, how do I neutralize this? It's really easy. How do you neutralize? You come first. You come first in your school and then get the highest exam mark. Done. You dictate what your assessment mark is. So what's a very important indicator here? Is it the mark or is it the rank? The rank is really important. The problem that I have with this is schools don't like giving you ranks. Do they give you ranks? If you go to a private school, they're even more like, it doesn't really matter, right? It's the effort that counts. I get that kind of crap from my school, with my daughter's school. I'm like, how many people got A's? They won't tell me. Well, how many people got B's? Why won't you give me the data? I don't understand. They won't give you the data. You have to fight for it. Because you want to know where you sit.
Do they have to provide this information?
I mean, certain schools have their own policies, but if you want me to do well in my HSC, it's ATAR. ATAR is a rank. If I'm not ranked high at school, how am I going to be ranked high at the state level? So it's counterintuitive, for most parents to be thinking about it this way, but that's what you need, as you'll see. Have a look at what's happening to Andrew. Andrew came 6th, and he got a assessment mark of 88. But the 6th highest HSC English exam mark is 86. So his 88 becomes what? 80? 86. This is where the marks are being taken away. I'll give you what happens at James Roos. 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. Top 13 students get 100. 99, 99, 99, 99, 99, 99, right? The 80th ranked student, ATAR, was 99.45 at school. What's the benefit of going to such a competitive school? You know that there is a pattern going on, which is what? There's a certain correlation, predictable correlation between my rank and my results, because they perform so predictably here. If your school's performance is like all over the place, one year they do very well, another year they don't do very well, it's to do with HSC exam marks. I have students telling me, I did really badly in my overall assessment, and I tell them, like, what's your rank? Oh, like, my rank is 7th. Okay, what's your mark? They were like 91. That doesn't sound too bad. Because that 91 could be what? 95, if your friends do very well in the HSC exam. So this is a slightly more simplistic way of looking at it. If you're in your 11 and your 12, you need to start tracking your rank, formally or informally. After every assessment task, you have an idea what everyone else got, right? And you should be trying to figure out, am I in top 10? Am I in top 20? Am I in top 5? Or did I get the highest mark? You gotta try and figure this out. If you don't, you're flying blind. Now that your marks are adjusted or moderated, the next bit is the scaling. How do we convert your overall HSC mark into a UAC score? There's a process for converting this. That's called scaling. What do we need it? Well, everyone does different combination of subjects. And despite what your school will tell you, you will find that there is a difference between the demand of the courses. The UAC person told me, can you please put a quotation mark on the difficult and easy? And the reason they asked me to do that is subjective. I disagree. I did it because I didn't want to piss them off, but we all agree extension 2 math is a very difficult subject. We're all going to agree extension 2 English is not for everyone, right? And what the UAC is doing is they're taking that into consideration. The way I like to describe it is the demands of the course vary. Getting 90 in math advanced and 90 in math extension 2 at the end of the process, it's very different. Here, I've lost 22 marks. I can't get this. Why? What do I need minimum? 480. How many marks have I lost? 22. So which means I have to get 100 in everything else, which is not possible, right? So you won't get 99.95. It's a simple addition and subtraction game. It's pretty obvious if you think about it this way. So what does that mean? If you tell me, DJ, I'm looking for 99.95, and you go, my goal is band 6 for my 2 in math, I would say no. That has to be 98. You have to get 98, 99 minimum for your math advance. That's what I'll tell you. Why? Because when you convert that, that becomes 92. Get the idea? People who get these marks, when they do math advance, they get 100. So now that you understand, oh my God, if I get this mark, it actually means this, that helps you become more strategic in the way amount of effort you need to put in. It can also be a bit of a turning point for you, right? What I thought was good enough is no longer good enough. This idea of talking in terms of band 6, I mean, everyone in here are thinking of band 6, but I'm saying depending on your ATAR, that may not be enough. I like to compare it to this idea of exchange rate. Think of every subject as exchange rate, right? English advanced is one currency, English standard another currency. If you're trying to compare how much money we have, 90 US dollar is very different to having 90 Chinese yuan, or 90 Japanese yen, or 90 euro. How do we know who has more money? What do? We convert it to a common currency. In your language, the common currency is the scaled marks. And there's an exchange rate. What does the exchange look like? The scaling graphs tell you what the exchange rate looks like. And it's extremely useful for figuring out what my rank needs to be. You're looking at a graph of scaled mark on the vertical axis versus percentile. What is percentile? Percentile is your rank. So let's look at this. If I'm in top 10% in English, advanced, you get a mark of 42 out of 50, which is 84 out of 100. Top 10% in the state. If you say to me, DJ, I am aiming for 99, 99 requires 446 out of 500, total sum, which is equivalent to about 45 out of 50. Would you agree? For every unit of subject, you need 45 out of 50. So you can now go, oh, okay, I'm doing advanced English. My goal is 99 plus ATAR, which means my minimum scale mark I need for my English is 45. 45. Top 4%. I have to be in top 4% in the state. Top 4% in the state. Do you remember the 10-step process I told you? Right? It's really, really hard. I honestly think that if you're good at English in the HSC system, you have huge advantage. English takes twice as long to improve or to show improvements compared to other subjects because of the long process involved. So if you're naturally good at English, then you have the upper hand. Why is that? If you go from 70, top 30% in the state, to top 10%, the difference here is, that's 42. Top 30, you're looking at 36. That's 8 marks, isn't it? Is that 8 marks? 42, 36 marks for 1 unit. Since it's 2 units, how many more marks do I get? 12. Going from top 30 to top 10 gives you additional 12 marks in the scaled mark. Is that clear? And why is that important? Because in math, the scaling is so good. If you're doing 3 and 4 in math, you don't have to be number 1. If you ask me what would give you better results, number 1 English and above average in 4 in math versus, average and number 1 in 4 in math. If you do the calculations, anyone who is number 1 in English and above average extension 2 will give you high ATAR. But the problem is, if you're good at math, what do? I like math, so I'm going to do math tonight. What are you doing tomorrow? I like math, so I'm going to do math tomorrow. What are you doing on Wednesday? Math. Thursday? Math. What do we call that? Stupid? Hazel? Just doing things? Well, you should be thinking about, okay, well, I'm really good at math, but I want to be a little bit more strategic. What is the minimum rank that I need to be aiming for if I'm looking for 99? 45. Down here. What's that? 66th percentile. Top 36%. If I'm in top 36%, just to be safe, top 30% in the state, I'm going to get 45 out of 50 or 90 out of 100 scale mark. What was it for English? What was it? Top 4%. If you spend additional hour every night doing math and more math and everyday math, you might go from here to here. How many more marks do you get? How many more marks do you get? 2 marks. 2. How much more do you get for English? 12. It's not obvious unless you see this. So you have to be clear first. My priority is English. English, 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 English. If you're not number 1 English, I'm asking you why. Then you look at, that's why the English is compulsory. That's how they designed it. Then you think about, 3 in the math, 4 in the math, chemistry, biology, business studies, economics. Right? If you're doing advanced math, unfortunately the scaling isn't as good. So it means you have to be much, much higher ranked. So if you're doing green, 45 for the green, top 4%. Similar to English, in a way. If you're doing math below that level, obviously scaling falls off dramatically. Yeah. And you got the science courses. I don't know if you realize, have you seen your family, friends, or people who've done really well in the HSC? They seem to be doing certain combination of subjects. Have you realized that? Like in science, they might be doing chemistry and physics, over biology. In math, they might be doing minimum 3 in math. In English, they might be doing advanced English or extension 1. There appears to be a pattern. And whether they know it or not, they're reaping the benefits of this scaling. Okay? Now, you might be thinking now, my God, you know what? I'm going to drop biology. Now I'm going to pick physics because that scales better. Wrong reason to change the subject. Why? If you decide to be a biomedical engineer, right, you should be interested in biology. And then you go, biology scale is not very good. So what do I do? Well, rank higher. That's the thinking. What the school is afraid of is that if they give you this, everyone goes, nah, that's not a very good subject, sir. I'm going to pick this. When we know fundamentally that's not a subject of your strength or alignment. The interpretation of this graph is very important. Use it to strategically position your relative rank. as opposed to using it to determine your subjects. But it's good to know how the things scale, right? Humanities, that's why you see a lot of the academically ambitious students doing what? Economics over business studies. There's a scaling difference. If I'm good at this, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do a harder subject. Is that making sense? Look, I mean, a lot of these graphs are, readily available on our website. You can have a look. It's interesting. Every year, we plot this every year. It changes slightly every year, but doesn't change that much. When you have a large cohort of students, it remains the same. The sample data is large enough. The subjects that I do not like and I do not recommend are language subjects in year 12. Unless you're doing what I call a subject that supports your studies in medicine. What is that? What language is medical science based on? Do you know? What is it? Latin. So I strategically position my students. Latin has a really good scaling. Not sure why it's on this. So a lot of students that when I'm recommending subject choices, they go to me, I want to be a doctor. Okay, fine. Another doctor we need, of course. Yeah. And we say, okay, what are your subject choices? We look at that, and they have to pick another subject to form 13 units, and they'll pick Latin. And they'll do Latin in year 11. And they'll drop that in year 12. It's a subject you don't want to carry with you, any languages. Why? You got like 200 people doing the subject. What's 1%? Rank 2 in the state. It's just too unpredictable. So I generally encourage you to use Duolingo if you're interested. But put that aside for perhaps something that you might want to be exposed in year 11 and leave it at that. So I've just created some ATAR scenarios. What does it look like if I do these combination subjects? So we built an ATAR calculator back 15 years ago. And we've figured out how the system works. So if you type in matrix ATAR calculator, you can put these subjects, you can put the ATAR target you want. It will pump out the mark and scale mark. I'll do a quick demo later on. I think for the sake of just as a case study, I thought it was interesting to see what different combinations of courses yields to. I gave a HSC mark of 90, which is like, oh, most students go, I want band 6, 90. So with this combination of courses, you get 91.45. I've swapped out a couple of the courses, such as like putting math there, putting biology there, right? And for the same HSC mark, my ATAR jumped from 91 to 95, right? And then I put in what I call Asian subjects. It's a bit racist, but this is what I did. And I know a lot of the students in selective schools will be doing this. Because they know if you perform well in this, the chance of your ATAR being high is almost guaranteed. They're taking advantage of scaling. It's not for everyone. I didn't know what I was doing. I just did this because everyone else was doing it. I hated economics. Look at the ATAR. If you add one more mark here, 91, 91, 91, 91, 91, 91, this jumps to 99. You think of it as a 1 mark, but it's not 1 mark. You think of it as, oh, I got that question wrong. Oh, shit. No, it's not shit. Like, you just lost 2 ATAR points. So a lot of the kids in year 12, I tell them you have to be obsessed. You have to be obsessed about little things. The careless errors you make in exams, they're costing you a big time. Like from your perspective, it's only a 1 question mark, 2 marks, whatever, right? It's not. when they translate it into ATAR, it's actually bigger than Ben-Hur, really. So if I'm doing these courses, which is like, relatively low scaling, on my ATAR calculator, I added 2 more marks. Because the scaling is poor, means the graph's like this, right? By adding 2 more marks, you go up the slope at a faster rate. So look, went from 91 to what? 95. That's 4 basis points. Okay? So hopefully this will change your attitude towards exams at school. I know certainly that when I'm interacting with boys, they're like, oh, whatever, sir. Well, it's more than that. So the rule is, when they calculate the ATAR, they have to take 2 units of English. If your English was the lowest mark out of 13 units, they still count. And then they figure out the remaining 8 units. So here's an example. So after converting the HSC mark into scaled mark, they take English, then out of the remaining 10 units, they look at not the lowest HSC mark, lowest scaled mark. So they remove that. So they take 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay? It's interesting. I often find that they say stuff like, oh, you know what, biology is my best subject at school. And the HS results come out, and they go, my biology mark didn't count. Because when they convert into scale mark, it's slightly different. It's interesting. Any questions?
In year 11, you have to do more units.
Yes.
So should students try in those units that they're not going to?
That's one of the questions I get asked a lot. What do they do when they go into year 12? My recommendation is 10 or 11 units is probably the most ideal combination of courses. The only time that I would recommend students to do 12, 13 is if you're ranked number 1 in everything. As I told you, my friend was doing 16 units, he was ranked in number 1 in everything in the state. If you're ranked number 1 in your school for every single one of the courses and you're doing very well, there's no problem. Chances are you probably won't be. Because if I have 7 courses, I have to divide fixed amount of my time across 7 subjects, and you're competing against someone who is dividing their time across 5 courses. Eventually catches up. Unless you're naturally brilliant in English, math, and science, and you don't have to worry about that, and you only focus on economics. In my case, I was okay with math and science. I spent huge amount of time in English and economics. So it really depends. I did 12 units back then, but in hindsight, I wish I had done 5 subjects instead of 6. Yeah.
So 12 across 11 and 12, you're saying?
In your 11, you're required to do minimum 12 because the idea is they're trying to expose you to more variety of subjects. And then when you roll over into year 12, you have the option to drop these courses. There are some conditions attached to the minimum number of units if you're doing extension 2 math or extension 2 English. Because they might find, oh, it's too hard, sir. I might want to drop my 4 unit math into 3 unit math. If you're doing 10 units, and if you drop the 4 unit math, you're dropping one of the units, it becomes 9 units, which means you no longer become eligible for an ATAR, which I'll show you in a minute. The next part is, okay, so I now understand how the system works. How do I take that into a process that helps me become more effective? Right? What was the conversation we had in the last half an hour? How the ATAR goal works. So the first thing is, at the very least, when you come to me for advice, you need to tell me what your ATAR goal is. Okay? If you can't tell me, we can't have a conversation. And then we have to convert your ATAR goal into HSC mark for each subject. Right? And the ATAR calculator does that for you very easily. Once you have your HSC mark for each subject, we take that and we figure out how many students got 90 out of 100 in English Advanced last year? We're trying to figure out the school ranking requirements. So if you don't have something like this, you need to start thinking about that. I like having a visual, section in my room. If you can, you should try and make one of the parts of the walls into a whiteboard surface, and you can put things up like your goals, right? Once you convert your 99 or whatever goal ATAR, it gives you the HSC marks required. And you take that HSC mark and you use it to figure out the required school ranking. So I built a table like this. Right, this is extracted from the ATAR calculator. English 93 I need. Point in math 87. No. Now, these are the marks you get at the end of your journey. So they're not quite meaningful to you. You can't measure yourself against these indicators. So what you need to do is, you gotta figure out what is the required school ranking. Now, fortunately, your school has historical data of every single student who has sat the HSC exam in terms of the mark and the rank. Okay? If your school does really well, they will publish that every year in your school newsletter, right? If your school is very silent about it, it means they haven't done very well, right? So, the question you need to be asking is, I need to get 93 HSC mark in advanced English. So you go to school and say, Miss, what is the school ranking required to get this mark? And your teacher will say, I don't know. Okay? They will tell, I don't know. They probably don't know. You might have to go to head of learning, perhaps. The better way to ask this is that your teachers will know is this. 93 is too precise. And it too fluctuates. At the very least, they can tell you how many students from our school got band 6 in advanced English last year. Because 93 is band 6. And they go, none. We're in trouble. Right? They go 50. Fantastic. And you go the year before, 45. The year before, 55. The year before, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to establish an average number of students. Is that clear? Let's say there's 20 students on average. Your school teacher would know. They have this data. They're given the data. And you go, top 20 students get 90 or above in HSC. But you want slightly higher than that, right? So now then you have to dig in deeper and try and figure out what those 93 equates to. And then you build a table like this. Okay? So everything up to here, you can do it on your own without talking to me. Right? Thinking of an ATAR, put it into the ATAR calculator, extract the marks, create a table, talk to my school, figure this out. Yeah? So far, so good. And then what you need to do is compare. What is my current school ranking? Where am I? Where am I at? Do you know why this is important? It goes back to me telling you about the students prioritizing. I told you a funny story about a student who loves math and does nothing but math. When you show your parents your school rank, what do you think your parents will say? Your best subject was chemistry. Your worst subject was what? English. That's what they would say, right? Now, if you put this data next to the required school rank, the conversation changes. Hey, my school rank for English is top 5. I'm ranked 25. Big red flag. Huge gap, right? My extension 2 math, I thought it was second worst. But I'm in top 20. It's okay. Your parents won't be saying you need help here, you need help here. I'm saying it's okay. And then you might go, hey, my physics is ranked 15, but I need to be in top 8. That's another alarm bell. But not as serious as this, is it? And then you look at, okay, what else is there? Well, my extension 1, I'm ranked 10. I'm in top 15. Tick. What about my chemistry? Tick. So the conversation changes straight away. I don't go from being, oh, that's pretty bad, to, that's actually quite okay. The kind of prioritization that happens is interesting when you have this data. So you're not going to now go from spending a lot of time doing math to prioritizing English. Then what's the next step? Physics, perhaps? I'm a bit biased here because I'm using my subjects here. This is a discovery that I had when I was in year 12. And I realized, you know what? I want my parents off my back. So I created this table called Parent Deterrent Table. And what do you do with it? You put it on the outside bedroom of your door. If you put it on the inside bedroom, they'll come in to look at that. And every term, you populate this. If it goes from 25 to 20, 15, then your parents will leave you alone. If it goes the other way, your parents will come in, what's going on? What are you doing? Right? Because they're concerned. Believe it or not, your parents have a very good understanding of your capability. And they want to support you to achieve your full potential. When I got my 3 in the math exam mark back in the yearly, I got 97. I was really proud. And I told my dad, I got 97. Came first. And he goes, where is the remaining 3 mark? And at the time, I had a light bulb moment. Oh, this is how it works. I hadn't managed his expectation. So in year 12, I started this routine. Every Sunday morning, I gave him an update. How things are going at school. How are you doing? Not good. Not good. Struggling. No. Half-yearly results came in. My math mark was 95. What do you think he said? Well done. If you're here with your parent, you cannot use this trick. But if you're here alone, of course, you can use this trick. I basically realized what the parents want is communication, timely communication. They want to know if they can support you better. And what they don't want is surprises. Okay? They don't want surprises. So all of my scholarship students develop them like this, and they track. And I'm monitoring them every fortnight. Every fortnight, they need to do 1 or 2 things completed that's blocking them. And you get into this process. Even if you do one every fortnight, there's only 52 weeks. If you think about the time of year 12, you're talking about, 20 at most? 20 rounds of iteration, 20 improvements in every single subject. If you make 20 significant improvements in every single subject over the course of 10 months, that's what I call revolution, really. You become a different person. If you start this in year 11 and you climb your rankings and you're in top 5 every single subject, then you figured it out. Oh, I know what I need to do differently. And what do you do in year 12? You just do more of that. If you're in year 12 now and you're thinking, I haven't considered this, you have to initiate change now. I know you will stay motivated through this weekend because of my talk. And hopefully, you can watch my video once every 3 days and stay motivated, perhaps, right? Some of the students ask me, how do you deal with what I need to do? So the top 1% students spend less than 50% of their time on this. You got to think about this. How much time do I spend on doing my school homework? Doing your school homework is like going to your basketball team training. Everyone does the same thing the same way. It's the minimum requirement. But if you want to become a basketball star player, what do you think you have to do? Huh? Would you think that there are things you can do differently? I call that individual training, right? Your coach might give you feedback, hey, Larry, your three-point shooting is terrible. You have to fix that technique. What do? You gotta find the time to do this. So a lot of the high-performing kids, they try to complete this in as little time as possible. So they can move on to the things they know is blocking them. So the way I describe it is school as usual task, right? And this is where you are now thinking about efficiency. How can I spend the least amount of time and get my schoolwork done? If that's your focus, you will be spending your lunchtime at the library. Because you know, if you don't, you have to go home, you have to finish this, and then move on to the next bit. You just don't have time in your 12. And one of the most efficient things you can do is just create a to-do list. What are the things I have to get done? It's a great way of completing your task efficiently. And once you've done that, you have to go, okay, hey, I want to go from rank 25 to 15 in English. I've been given feedback that my quality of my thesis statement is poor. This week, I'm going to work on that. If it's a 10-step process, if you work on each part of the process every week, that's 10 weeks. But you have to find the time to do it. So you methodically are working through this process, right? Figuring out what are the right things and figuring out how to do them the right way. Here's an example of what I showed you before, but how this student prioritizes. They've got a rhythm going on. This rhythm is specific to this student's learning needs, but it's a rhythm. They don't have to think about what they have to do today because it's aligned to addressing their key learning gaps. They don't react to it 3 weeks before the exam, 5 days before the exam. They start the process early. I don't know if you've realized, if you come to Matrix, we'll do a couple of things for you. The two things that I think that we do really well is, one, we give you a complete set of resources. Like my Year 12 physics book is 300-something pages thick. It used to be 380. We had to cut it down to 400 pages. For each module. Why do we do that? Well, first of all, we want to save you time. Save you time from having to find resources, collate them, and figure out what's important, what's not. But more importantly, the Band 6 descriptor in physics demands that you get an extensive knowledge and understanding. You have to demonstrate. I don't have a thorough knowledge or sound, which is Band 4 and Band 5. I have to demonstrate I have an extensive knowledge. There's no way your school will be able to provide you and equip you with enough resources to meet this, from my experience. You just don't have enough class time. Second, once you have acquired this knowledge, you gotta consolidate that. So we have this process that we built in within Matrix program. And as a student, you would have experienced this. Oh yeah, they give me my workbook, homework book. Oh yeah, they give me other additional resources. They give me one-to-one workshops so that I can address my learning needs, right? I'm telling my students, create this book. Some of them haven't heard of this. What's Fail book? It's a book that contains all your mistakes. I call it first attempt in learning. Anything you do something for the first time, you are going to make mistakes. And the chances are, if you are thinking about it that way, the chances are you repeat that again. So to avoid that, which is addressing the careless errors, right? There's a clear reason for doing this. You create this book, it's like your own notes. I don't make notes. I document what my mistakes are, so I can remind them before the exam. That's what you should be looking at 3 days before the exam. What not to do? This is all what to do. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that, you know, you got to think about the process. You got to think about the system. You got to think about how do I do this not just efficiently, but how do I do this, first of all, effectively. And we've made sure the students have gone through this process, give lots and lots of tips on how they did it differently. So we have this culture of sharing secrets, what we call secrets of HSC studies. You know, our past graduates, they basically write a blog article, invitation only, of course, right? And tell our matrix students community what they did differently and what's worked for them. And this is, you know, widely accessible on our website, on the blog part of the content. So if you're on our mailing list, you may have received these things. They're quite inspirational. You know, they bring in sort of very unique perspective on their view on how to study more effectively. So how do I develop an effective study plan then? This is where I come in, right? You do your 100-day running, yeah, for 100 days consecutive, and you show me the proof, and I will spend some of my time helping you develop this, okay? If you're in year 11, you have obviously a lot of time. If you're in year 12, you have very little time to demonstrate that. This is what I would do. 1, let's figure out what the process should be for every single one of your courses. English, business studies, geography, every single subject or course you're doing, there's an effective process. Anyone who tells me there isn't, they don't know what they're talking about. If you can't describe what you're doing as a process, then you really don't know what you're talking about. It's like you're saying there's no recipe. There's a recipe for every single thing you cook. So there's a recipe for study. You're going to find that's the most effective for you. Okay? So an example that I gave you was, you know, English, right? An example I can give you for math and science is this. This is why you find studying for math and science easier. It's a 5-step process as opposed to 10-step process for English. And then once you've done that, you now have to be mindful of your time because you've just discovered there's so much to do. So how do I do all of that in the given time that I have? The answer is you can't. You can't do all the things. Then I have to choose. What are the things that I can do versus what are the things I can't do? This prioritization kicks in. Okay? Even just creating a list of to-do things for the week, and if you go through an exercise of ticking things off, you will find that you'll never get there. There's always something popping up. You're always constantly fighting distractions, right? So once you've accelerate your learning, put your hand up if you're at Matrix for the holiday course. You've just finished an entire module before the school begins. What does that mean? That means you've done step 1, step 2 already. Now you have 10 weeks to do step 3 and step 4 and 5. You front-loaded the step 1 and 2. If you haven't, what am I doing? I have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for all my subjects every week. And I have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 for English every week. And once you've done that, you want to think about, is this the right process for me? Is it working? How do I know? Every fortnight, you need to do a check-in. Is my process currently working? It takes a bit of brute force to initiate this change. This is where your parents come in. Okay, you make this public declaration at home. How do I make this public declaration? You put up a big ATAR poster, right, in an area where everyone can see. And obviously that means something to everyone. And they have an understanding of what that means in terms of your daily rhythm. And if you're doing nothing, your parents will go, and you go, okay, that's right. It's a passive-aggressive feedback. I use that a lot with my kids. And they get the idea very quickly. Without reflection, it's very difficult to accelerate your improvements. To get that feedback, you need your parents involved, unfortunately. They can make qualitative observations about what you're doing right versus what you're not doing right and get them involved. The performance-banded script that I've talked about, here it is. This is not something I created. It's up there, right? So in 2021, 24,000 students set the English Advanced. 16.3% were able to satisfy this. Demonstrates extensive knowledge, insightful understanding, sophisticated evaluation, critical, refined personal response, originality, sophistication. I mean, these things where they tell you if you memorize your essay and you go in there and you don't answer it directly, you're going to lose marks. It's not something that I create. They're looking for these signals, right? If you're doing 3 math, 4 math, again, you get this extensive word, keep recurring, yeah? Chemistry, one of the things you need to know is designing investigations. Who does chemistry at school? Yeah? Designing investigation. If you're thinking, what the hell is that? Then you're in trouble. On familiar situations, you will get a question that you've never seen before. It's guaranteed, right? That's what they're saying. So, what does a rhythm look like for students who have achieved 99 plus? They always use school holidays, not as a time of rest, but as a time, as a period to cover the content aspect of their course. If you look at it's almost like I'm cooking scrambled eggs. I'm going to get all the ingredients first. I don't want to have to go and buy all the things and then start. Makes a huge difference. Asking your 11 students to sacrifice their school holidays is a big deal. Asking your 12 students to sacrifice their school holidays is not a big deal, right? So you'll find that a lot of the 11, 12 students are using school holidays at Matrix to get ahead. It's not even that ahead a lot. I mean, like next week, doesn't your school begin? A typical, sort of routine they've done in the past. I've had some crazy students like this. You know what this is? This is like some of our scholarship students. They come in at 9. They go home at 8. They spend 3 hours doing homework, and they repeat that for 2 weeks during the school holidays. Well, look how their term schedule looks like now. The advantage of front-loading this kind of stuff is what are they doing now? They're doing application. They're not learning content. Whatever they're learning in class is revision. And they're just simply refining their exam skills. They have time for other things now. This is a strategic, approach. But it's not for everyone, right? But those who can make the sacrifices will come back and say, you know what, it was worth it. Pretty extreme, right? So if you're thinking of this kind of ATAR, my suggestion is you can forget about holidays for the next 9, 10 months because every hour should count. So this is one of the students I mentored who was aiming for 99.95. She got there eventually, but at the beginning of year 11, these were the rankings. This was at James Roos. So, I mean, at James Roos, it's still pretty good ranking. But to get that, we didn't quite beat the 491 record. But that's what she was aiming for. Yeah. So yeah, it took crazy amount of hours of study. She was doing no more than 6 hours a night. She was literally taking on every single feedback that we give very seriously and translating that into something that can be actioned straight away. She was very obsessive about the little things, right? Little things. It's always the little things. And in the end, she was driving our English team crazy. She was coming back every 2 days writing an essay and asking for feedback. She just didn't need to memorize anything. It's like she had all of the Lego pieces. And if we ask you to build a house, she knows which pieces to use to build a house. So she was doing crazy number of English essays. She got state rank for English, of course. But it's giving you an idea of how others are going to the extreme measures to achieve their goals. Okay, so finally, I'm going to just summarize some of the things like do's and don'ts. What not to do if you have no goals, you're in trouble. It means no commitment. You have time to figure this out. Got to learn to prioritize, because no prioritization means poor time management. If you're not thinking about process, then your results will be unpredictable. It's like me trying to cook scrambled egg without a recipe. Every time I do it, it's going to taste different because I'm doing things differently. I would encourage you to think about doing things on focus on who you want to be, and thereby defining your goals. If you're not too sure who you want to be, talk to people who've been through this process, and see what their life is like. Then figure out a study rhythm. This will be not an easy thing to do, and this is where I come in, right? But as I said, if you want me to provide some of my time, you have to demonstrate to me that you have what it takes, which is discipline. I'm not looking for smarts. I'm looking for discipline. One of the students that I helped out was, there was a girl at Stratford Girls. She was struggling, but she was very determined. She went through this process in year 9. By the end of year 10, she was a dux of the school. She felt like the school wasn't challenging enough. She moved to senior girls in year 11. Then a year later, she became the dux of the school. And in year 12, she got 99.95. This is a very ordinary non-Asian kid. It was like, when this girl moved into senior girls, everyone sort of looked at her and said, who is this girl? Right? She came in year 11, and she was at the dux. So her name is Chloe Biden, and I think she went to do medicine and whatnot. The story that I'm trying to tell you here is, you don't have to be that smart to get this kind of ATAR. But you do need to be determined. Some people have it naturally. Others can acquire it by creating an environment that forces it. Most boys need to be pushed into it, in my opinion, initially. So, yeah. Lastly, you need to track your progress. What should I be tracking? What's my primary indicator? Is it mark or is it rank? School rank. Yeah. It's a long, long journey in case you didn't notice. Yeah. If you've studied year 12, you would know it's how stressful it is. And my advice to you is, you can't do it without your friends. You can't do it without your parents' support. It's going to be a very lonely journey. Why not leverage off your friends? Why not leverage off your parents who can provide mental support along the way? So that's it. Thank you for listening. I'm pretty sure I've gone over time. Does anyone have a time check? 12? What time did I start? 10. Oh, I've gone over. What I'll do now is, I've discovered there are people who want to ask me questions individually, and there are people who want to ask questions in a public forum. So I'm happy to take questions, but before I take the questions, maybe I will present the questions that have been frequently asked. Okay? I'll stick around after this as long as needed to provide you with individual advice if you have one. Okay? Now, so frequently asked question. First question is it better to do 10 units or 12 units? My advice is less is more. You want your child to be juggling less number of courses. So if you can do 10 units, I would encourage it. If your school prevents it, which is not legal, but prevents it, and they encourage you to do minimum 11 units, it is what it is. Minimum number of units is what I'm looking for. Okay? Would you recommend Math Extension 2 or English Extension 2? My advice is only if you are good at this. It's a very demanding course. It sucks up your time a lot. The amount of time you need to invest in Extension 2 is twice the Extension 1, generally speaking. If you don't have a dedicated, obsessive English teacher at school, you shouldn't be thinking about Extension 2. It's a project-based. Okay? The third, I'm studying the 3 science courses. Which one do I drop? Biology, chemistry, or physics? That depends. What are you thinking of? If you're thinking about doing advanced science at uni, as an undergraduate degree, I'll recommend chemistry, physics. If you're thinking about doing biomedical engineering, I'll recommend you do physics and biology. Like the point I'm making is your subjects to some degree should align with your university course ambitions. Okay? But if you had no idea and I want to just cover my bases, I would always choose physics and chemistry over biology. All of the undergraduate science courses has prerequisite requirement of physics and chemistry, not biology. I'm doing a language course. Look, if you're passionate about French and you do want to continue, I mean, I can't stop you, but my general advice is, language courses are unpredictable in terms of your HSC marks. My school is not competitive. What do? What did I say? Be ranked number 1. Okay? Number 1 and number last, they don't get affected. Right? Everyone else in between, their marks will have to be adjusted. What's more important in year 12? Assessment marks or ranks? But if you're ranked number 1 with 75, that's an alarm bell, isn't it? Right? So I think these things need to be taken into consideration of. Last question. I get distracted easily and trouble managing my time. Do you have tips on managing time? Absolutely, I do. Once you define who you want to be, and once you figure out what the required ranking are, you will change intrinsically. The reason why you're wasting your time is because you are not necessarily prioritizing. You can't ask your parents to help you manage your time. It doesn't work. But if you really have a clear idea on what you want, as well as what you don't want, right? Then this is, in my opinion, self-regulating. Can you imagine the time? Can you imagine opening your phone, opening your text message on the morning of 20th December this year? Wouldn't it be nerve-wracking? You get your HSC results and ATAR on the same day by SMS. Wouldn't you want to be opening the SMS knowing what your marks will be like? Or will you be so nervous that your ATAR starts with 9 or 8 or 7? That experience, I think, will be horrifying for those who know what's coming. So if positive reinforcement doesn't work, use what you will lose as a way to remind you. Any questions? Yes? Yes, that's right. Yeah. The schools are required to submit the overall assessment marks along with the internal ranks. But what you'll find is whatever the internal marks are actually won't be the mark they will actually be submitting. Yeah, it's a simplistic explanation of how it works. Yeah. Yeah. Some schools actually use their own moderation before submitting to the board. Yeah, some schools don't. It really depends. Yeah.
In that example, because it's clearly top that they don't.
That's right.
They could move them.
Yeah, yeah. So if your school does really well in HSC exams, so basically the way you think about it is between now and all the way to the trial exams, It's me versus my friends. Once that's over, at the HSC level, it's school versus school, basically. So you want your school. So typically what I would advise is you want to share everything you have with your friends leading to the HSC exam. After the trial exam's over, you want to share everything because you want all of your friends to be getting like 100, 100, 100, 100 as opposed to 99, 85. If you're ranked number 2,
The kids in your band at the top.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we encourage students to form a buddy. If I'm ranked number 3, I would encourage you to form a buddy system with number 1 and number 2, number 3, and number 4. You want that group to do really well. Because you want the HSC marks to be maintained, basically. I mean, if I'm number 1, I'm not going to form a buddy with number 10. This doesn't make sense. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes?
So I'm good at English. Like I have been for the past 2 years I've been scoring first, like
Yeah.
between 44 to 50
Yeah.
like in every exams. But for me, I'm ready to do extension 2 for English. I have good basics and I
Yeah.
have good structure in my thing. I'm doing it. But my thing is I'm doing math. For that I need at least maths advanced to do it. So for
Yeah.
maths advanced, it's pretty low. It's not low. It's pretty low scaling in terms of if I
Yeah.
get 90, it's pretty low. So I have to take at least extension 1 or 2.
No, I don't think you need to do extension 1 math. I think you can do math advanced. The point is, what is the minimum required mark if I'm doing math advanced? That's the question you should be asking. And the way you figure that out is by looking at the scaling graph, right? So it may not be, 90 may not be enough, right? You may have to be 97, perhaps. So for you, your job is, okay, well, my strength lies with English and humanities. My math which is a compulsory subject at university, math advanced. If I'm taking the subject, you got to figure out what is the minimum mark required for that. Okay? My guess is it won't be 90. It'll be something in the order of 95 plus. Yeah.
Another question. So, see, with respect to English, right? So, let's say she's from a school which is not selective. So, obviously, the teachers in English are not that motivated.
Yeah.
Plus, coming from Asian background, our English is also not good.
Yeah.
So, what can be done?
Look, my general advice on the English is it takes very long time to show improvements. In math, after 1 term, you can show step-up improvements. The English is something like this. It's a bit like going to fitness training. Most people try for 90 days, and the improvement is very gradual. You can't transform your body in 90 days. It happens, and then they give up before they're about to take off. So the way you need to think about English is, to really perfect that process of 10 steps, it takes a long time, even if you do the right thing the right way. My observation is, you won't see any signs of improvement for at least 6 months. So 6 months, and then you begin to see exponential improvements. So you have to go back to the process. Am I reading the text correctly? Do I know what that means, reading for meaning? Do I know how to conduct the research of the text author? There are a bunch of things that students are not doing. They can't be bothered, or they don't know they have to do it. So just knowing what they have to do first of all, and going through the process one at a time, and along the way they're going to make mistakes, which is fine. This is why they have to do repetition. So you can rely on your school teacher to guide you, which is an essential part of the process. One of the tricks that I give to students is, when you write an essay, you want that first essay to be marked by your school teacher, not by a matrix teacher, a school teacher. Why is that? You're going to hold your teacher accountable. You gave me this series of feedback, I've actioned it, and when the exam time comes, you can't go against your feedback. But what I find is the feedback they give you is not aligned to the 10-step process I've explained to you. The feedback is very vague, what I'm saying. So you take that feedback, if it's vague, you ask one of the teachers here and say, hey, how do I translate into something action? And you action it, and you take it back to the school teacher and say, well, I've acted on your feedback. Is this what you're looking for? So you have to go through this round of changes before the assessment day, basically. So what's the requirement? Minimum, a lot of my students, minimum they do 2 rounds of iteration. Like week 2, they're ready to give an essay. Week 5, another essay. And when the assessment task period comes, week 7, I've literally incorporated all my teachers' feedback. And so they have no real reason to take marks off on my essay. It's kind of like playing a bit of game, but it's necessary because a lot of students see essays as being what? Very subjective. If you look at the marking rubrics, it is not subjective at all. You read the performance band descriptor, it's very clear. For every essay, very clear what is expected of you. Because it can be subjective, it's even clearer than physics or math. So my advice to you is, if a teacher gives you vague feedback, you need to try and obviously get more actionable feedback. If you can't get actionable feedback from your school teacher, you have to seek external help. And when you give that essay back, of course, they will take a long time to get back to you. So you have to be on their back. It's a constant battle, unfortunately. This is why if you have an English faculty at school, and it's a team of really brilliant, like, literature, teachers, then the results are amazing. I'll give you an example. Kambala had 3 years ago, for 3 years, they had stellar results. They came first in the state. Everyone in year 12 got band 6 English. It's incredible. And the head of English left 2 years ago. And I knew, okay, the English marks are going to drop. And it did. It's, unfortunately, there is a huge human dependency on English, unlike math or science. Yeah. So I would not recommend extension 1, extension 2 in English if you have a teacher who doesn't care. They have to be obsessed. Yeah. And they're not very easy to find. Yeah. That's my observation. Okay, well, thank you for your time, and hope you took away something actionable. And I'll stick around for one-on-one questions if you have any. Okay, thank you, everyone. Oh, and also, I'm going to ask you for a favor. Can I get some feedback? I would love some feedback on what you found helpful. It helps me articulate for the next seminar what I can do better.